The Volkswagen Taos gets a refresh for the 2025 model year. And in this video, I'm going to cover the exterior changes, the interior changes, take it for a drive and see what it's like out on the road, as well as talking about the kind of fuel economy you can expect, and also the pricing and how this compares to the competition. And so as far as the styling here, we've got a nice little refresh here for 2025. You now have standard IQ LED headlights up front there, so LEDs across the board as standard. Now that light bar you see in the middle there, that is only on this SE Black and the top SEL version. Otherwise you go without that. But otherwise, you still get that same nice bold front bumper there and a really nice refresh. Again, it looked nice before the refresh, but this nicely freshens it up. You also have some nice new colors here for 2025, including a bright green and some nice blues as well. Coming down to the sides here, you have new wheel designs for 2025, and on the SE Black, of course, they are black wheels and look nice here. Otherwise though, you also see on the sides here, you now have a two-tone combo available here, and so you can see that one with a black roof on this, looks really nice, but there's a variety of color combos you can do there if you'd like. And you also have the black mirror caps and all that to go along with the SE Black here. And then going out to the back, you will see that it is also completely new as far as that taillight arrangement, which now gets a bar connecting them in the middle and even has an illuminated Volkswagen badge there in the back. You'll also see there's a new rear bumper there. And so overall, I think they did a really great job here on the exterior styling of this refresh. The interior also gets its own refresh here for 2025. And it's improved in some ways. We have some nicer materials. We have what feels like a blend of like Alcantara and neoprene almost on the dashboard here. We'll also see that same material here on the seats, which I'll talk about in a minute. But, and they try to improve some of the materials, but there's still lots of hard plastic in here. And it feels solid, but it just feels, not quite as plush as some of the nicest competitors these days, especially some of the newer ones. And the tech they've fallen behind on. We still only have an 8-inch touchscreen, even though many of the other competitors have gone to larger screens, only have a little 8-inch digital gauge cluster. And so this still feels kind of old tech, kind of like prior gen compared to everything else we have here in 2025. But anyway, first thing, sitting down in these seats. So we do have some heated seats here in the SE Black edition, and they're a nice combo of, again, more of this like neoprene, Alcantara kind of feeling mixture with leatherette on the sides and a little bit of cloth as well. And it's a cool combo. You can also get some cool color combinations for the interior. I think there's like a dark blue leather you can get now. My only complaint with these seats is that they're not perforated. And I mean, I'm filming this right now in the winter time, but I worry that in the summer, these seats would make your back and bottom pretty sweaty because it just would really stick to your back and, not ventilate at all. So I'd either go down to the cloth seats that you get in the base S trim, or I would go up to the SEL and get the actual leather, which I believe is perforated. I'd go one or the other. I mean, this trim is kind of a nice sweet spot in other ways, but as far as these seats, maybe if you live in a place that doesn't get too hot or something, you could live with them, but don't love this choice, for just, again, comfort. And otherwise, I mean, they are heated. They're power adjustments here on the driver's side as well. And, pretty comfortable seats. They're a little firm. That's another area where some others do a better job with seats these days. But they're fine. And so anyway, moving on to the steering wheel. The steering wheel is one of the bright spots of this interior because it is a heated steering wheel as standard, even in a base $26,500 S, which is higher than some of the other base trims of other competitors. I'll get more to pricing later in the video, but one thing that most of the competitors can't offer is a heated steering wheel at all, and the few that do typically only offer it in a top trim. So if heated steering wheel is number one on your priority list in this segment, and you want a deal, this is the cheapest way I think to get a heated steering wheel in this segment. And it's a really nice steering wheel, though. It has some regular normal buttons on it as well. Hasn't gone to the other trend that other Volkswagens are doing of having capacitive touch. We still have the regular buttons, a really nice 9-3 grip, nice little 10 and 2 notches, and a flat bottom. A really great steering wheel. The gauge cluster here in this is, again, partially digital, partially just kind of pretending to be digital with the, other corners there. But so this gauge cluster is standard in everything except the SEL. The SEL gets a 10.3-inch cluster, which is going to fill out that whole binnacle there. But this 8-inch screen is still fine. Gives you all the basic information you need. There is a few different views you can go through, so one will give you a little bit more of a info pack display, or you can have it just nice and simple with the tach, or even just a speedometer if you'd like. And so, I think for this type of buyer, that certainly makes sense and certainly does work just fine. Again, it's not going to win any design awards or be anything impressive. There's a lot of the other competitors that do have larger displays these days for those, especially a lot of them have, big displays even as standard. So a little bit behind, a little bit old-fashioned feeling, but still totally fine in my opinion. Moving over to the center of the dashboard here, though, the one thing that isn't really fine these days is this 8-inch touchscreen. Now, the positive part I'll mention is that it is the old Volkswagen infotainment system, which if you're unfamiliar with Volkswagen might sound kind of backwards, but this older system is easier to use than their new one that has confusing and odd menu setups and gets rid of the tuning knob and the volume knob and all that. This is great that it has, volume and tune knobs still. It's really quick and snappy with connecting wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, which is standard in everything except the base S, and that it goes down to wired for some reason. But, you still have the smartphone integration in all of them, and, it has satellite radio. Changing your radio stations is nice and easy. Everything is really quick and snappy and easy and simple. And so, again, it might not be the biggest in size, but for the basics, especially just navigating your phone screen, which is what a lot of people are going to be doing, and that's it, it's completely fine. And so, again, another area where it's not going to wow anybody, but it works, and it works well and reliably. And, there's something to be said for that for sure. So I think it could have been worse. They could have put the new Volkswagen screen in. It would have been a little bit more of a bittersweet kind of swap. I'm happy with this. It just, again, doesn't compare very well with all the other competitors. Some even offering up to a 12-inch screen, 50% bigger than this. So, it just comes down to your personal preference there. Now, it's also connected to a regular just Volkswagen stereo. There's no branded stereo upgrade. That is another area where a lot of the other competitors will give you Bose stereos, Harman Kardon stereos, a bunch of different, branded nice stereo upgrades that do sound better as well. In addition to just feeling more prestigious, there's a lot better sounding stereos in this segment. This one isn't bad. Again, gets the job done. You can sense a theme here with the Taos interior. Gets the job done fine, but, isn't going to wow you either. And the real sticking point too, which again, I'll get into more later, but is this vehicle's as tested price of just over $32,000. And if this were cheaper, I could see, okay, if there's a value case to be made here, great. But 32 grand comes in even higher than most of the other competitors do fully loaded with, Bose stereos and big screens and all kinds of other perks, which I'll get into later. But so, again, in a vacuum, if you only are shopping at the Volkswagen dealer and nowhere else, this might be fine. It's a nice upgrade from your old Taos, whatever, and that's good enough for some people. But if you do cross shop, it just kind of falls apart, unfortunately. Also coming down, one place where we unfortunately did lose some knobs and buttons is with this little capacitive touch panel for your HVAC controls. And, it's not ideal, but this certainly could be worse, I think. It is pretty quick and snappy, pretty simple and straightforward. You still have lots of, direct controls instead of having a bunch of stuff up in the screen like some others are trying to do little by little. This works well enough, and I don't think it's too big of a deal. You do have to kind of look down at it to make sure you're hitting the right thing, so a little bit more distracting than buttons and knobs, but it's not a big deal, so I won't harp on that. Moving on, you also have this nice deep cubby that's rubberized and has a wireless phone charger, as well as 2 USB-C jacks and a regular power outlet. But great to have that. And it's a well-done wireless charging pad where, it's angled so aggressively that it does hold your phone in place really well, in addition to having the rubberized, components to it. And you also will see you have nice large pockets in the doors. Some of the largest pockets in a door in this segment, I think. I mean, huge bottle holder and really well done there. You also have your 2 cup holders and a little slot here right next to them. And then you also have the center armrest, which is nice and softly padded. And you open that up and you'll see a decent amount of space. Again, smaller than some others in this segment, but, I'd say it's roughly average for the segment. And nice and deep at least, and so that's good. And then moving on to the back seat here in the Taos. That is one of the biggest perks of the Taos, is it has a big back seat. And when these first came out a few years ago, this was almost unbeatable in its segment as far as how much rear seat space you had. But now a few years have passed and the competitors have caught up, and some of the newest competitors now have just as much rear legroom as this does, or very close to it, and some I'd argue might even have a tiny bit more. And so it still is excellent though, and it still is better than many of the other subcompact crossovers, especially some of the older ones in this segment. And so I'm 5'9", sitting behind myself. I still have, I don't know, about 3 or 4 inches of legroom to spare easily. Good amount of headroom as well. You also have this beautiful panoramic moonroof here on the SE Black and the SEL. That is also something that you really don't get the option even for a panoramic roof on most of the other competitors. And so if heated wheel and pano roof are two big things for you, that is an area where the Taos offers those and the others don't. But I mean, it's really a huge roof in a little vehicle like this. It really does make a statement, and it's great, especially for those rear seat occupants. Also, when they look forward, you'll see they do have their own dedicated air vents, as well as another USB-C jack. There's also a fold-down center armrest with two cup holders put into it, and also pockets in those doors. Cargo space in the Taos is also very well done, and that is an area where I think this is still pretty close to the top of its segment. It might actually be the best, mainly because of how deep it is. So while many of the other competitors, especially again newer competitors these days, do have a similar size as far as how long the cargo space is and even how wide it is, but this goes, I think, a tiny bit deeper than some of the really good ones these days, like the Chevy Trax, like the new Nissan Kicks. It's bigger than like a Subaru Crosstrek hatch. It's really, really well done. And it is worth noting, though, that if you go for the all-wheel drive version, you will lose a little bit of that depth. It does kind of raise that floor a little bit just to make room for the different rear suspension you get in the all-wheel drive versions. But it's still going to be a massive amount of space. And because of how boxy this vehicle is as well, compared to some of the other competitors that might have a little bit of a more sporty roof line, this being so boxy means you can really stack a bunch of stuff in here. And so from a utilitarian standpoint, absolutely, this is hands down, one of the best out there still. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Taos here has also one of the best keys in the industry just because it's one of the smallest keys in the industry. I love these Volkswagen keys. So nice and small. Doesn't take up any room in your pocket. So thin too. Just really such a nice key. And it just has the basics, nothing fancy. It's all plastic, doesn't feel super impressive, but I just love that it's small because there's so many huge keys that drive me crazy. But anyway, it is of course keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. Alright, so setting off here in the 2025 Taos. So the first things you notice about it here, you have excellent visibility, you have a nice big windshield, nice thin A-pillars, you're sitting up nice and high, which is great. Great view out of the sides, view out of the back is good. You also have, of course the camera in the back and all that, the sensors and all those things to help you, just with navigating this vehicle, even though it's so small, very easy to maneuver and all of that. But the one thing that I'm really noticing, I'm really loving about the Taos is that it's much easier to drive smoothly. Whenever I reviewed a Taos a few years back, I really complained a lot about how it was just like basically impossible to drive that car smoothly due to the transmission tuning, where it just either downshifted too much and gave me a ton of RPMs all the time, or it would bog down. There was no happy medium. It was like the gas pedal was an on-off switch. And in this, thankfully, it's been much better. It's not perfect, and I'll get into that more in a minute, but it's much, much better. But of course, we'll turn that onto a back road here and see how it accelerates. It's no sport mode, so you just stomp on it. And it goes pretty nicely here. Nice and punchy. Now, it did get more power here for 2025. That is one of the big improvements. So, still a 1.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, but now it does 174 horsepower, which is 16 more than before, and 184 pound-feet of torque still, which is unchanged from before. Which is interesting because this motor got a lot of tweaks to it. So, they did add a particulate filter, which helps with emissions, but does usually hurt performance. So, I think to compensate for that downgrade, they had to upgrade some other stuff so we didn't lose power, and we had a nice little power gain as well. So it now has new piston rings, a new turbo housing, there's a larger intercooler, and a couple other little tweaks to just make this engine a little more powerful than before. But it seemed pretty extensive for only 16 horsepower, which is why I think the particulate filter kind of hurting some of that performance is part of why they needed to do such extensive improvements for just what looks like only a 16 horsepower gain on paper. It's plenty of power though, and I will say this is one of the punchier ones in this segment. Now, there are still a few others that have a little bit more horsepower, but most people in this segment aren't going to really be focused on that, most likely. So I'll just say, I'd say this is comfortably mid-pack. It's certainly more horsepower than some of the cheapest competitors in this segment, and having the turbocharger is nice to give you some of that punch down low that some of the others don't have still, with them, not having turbos. But, there are, again, others that are more punchy. But Beyond that, you know, it's like a 7-second 0 to 60 time, and you know, all-wheel drive, by the way, is a $1,700 option if you want it. This one has front-wheel drive we have here currently, and so it's just going to come down to how much you need that all-wheel drive traction. But I will say this thing still does like to spin tires, so if you live in a place where you see some weather, I'd still probably go for the all-wheel drive version, or some good winter tires for sure if you have snow. But anyway, coming up some corners here that I always take, let's see how the Taos handles. So, you know, nothing super sporty here. And again, being the SE, we even have the simpler rear suspension where we just have a torsion beam rear in this. If you were to go for the all-wheel drive version, you would have a multi-link rear suspension, which gives you a little more sophistication. The average buyer is never going to honestly probably notice a difference, but if you are an enthusiast, just know you do have that distinction of the all-wheel drive having slightly better handling potentially. Now, these all are going to be, you know, pretty light, and it is also, you know, worth noting that going to all-wheel drive gives you, you know, a little bit of a weight penalty with these going up to, you know, probably close to about 3,600 pounds with all-wheel drive. We're down, you know, a little over 3,300 pounds here with front-wheel drive, and so it handles itself really well. I think the steering's nicely weighted. It's not too heavy, but it's not too light. It's kind of just right, I think, for a vehicle like this. Also, you know, as we've got up to some traffic here, brakes feel nice and normal, and actually I think are a little bit better than what I remember a few years back, where they were a little squishier back then. These days, it seems to be pretty good, and again, pretty average brakes for this segment, and no complaints with that whatsoever. And so, you know, I'll say going around corners, it doesn't love going around corners. I don't think it's one of the sportiest ones in this segment. I think like Kona N-Line was a little sportier, Mazda CX-30 is still a little sportier. There's maybe, you know, a few others that are, you know, just a little bit better to take around corners, but you know, it's going to be totally fine for the average driver, and I will move on here. The ride quality is pretty nice and smooth here. So, you know, I haven't tried the all-wheel drive version, so I'm not sure if it's any smoother with that fancier rear suspension, but what I can say is I've had no complaints with ride quality this week for this segment. Again, it's not going to be a luxury car. None of the things in this segment are, so you know, it is what it is. But you know, on the occasional pothole or, you know, rough bump, it does, you know, make itself known, but not too bad. And again, it's been a really nice thing, honestly, to just run around and do my errands in this week. Been totally delightful. And you know, road noise is, I'd say, about average for this segment as well. There might be a couple others that are a little quieter, but you know, it's again a subcompact crossover, low cost kind of vehicle. You know, that's just going to be kind of what you get here. But you know, this road that we're on currently does usually generate a little bit more road noise. And you hear a little bit of it. It's even slightly wet here, but not too bad at all. And again, you have a conversation going or you have music going, you're not even going to be paying attention to it. So I think it's totally fine from a refinement standpoint as well. And now out on the highway here in the Taos, I do have the adaptive cruise control system on with the lane keeping assist, which is actually standard here for 2025. And a lot of the competitors still do charge you extra or make you go up to a higher trim in order to get adaptive cruise control. Some of the others do also make it standard, but you know, some don't. And so it's notable you get that as standard. You also get blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic alert as standard. It's another thing that some companies still nickel and dime you for some of that stuff. And so it means that really the only options from a safety standpoint for the Taos are on SE and higher. You do get the parking sensors, and you also get adaptive headlights, which will, you know, turn with the steering wheel to give you better views into corners at night. And certainly a nice thing to have, but you know, that's something that again only a couple of the other competitors even offer these days. So you know, not a big deal to not have that, and it's great you have just again LED lights as standard, because that is something that some of the others still don't give you as standard. So overall, you know, really well done as far as the safety tech, and I gotta applaud Volkswagen for making all this stuff standard. Otherwise, you know, just cruising on the highway here, it's a little bit of wind noise, it's a little bit of a windier day, but totally fine. A really nice little cruiser, nice and smooth. The last couple of things we really mentioned here are the fuel economy and then the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as fuel economy goes, these are rated at 28 mpg in the city, 36 on the highway, and 31 combined. And in my driving here, I drove about 100 miles or so, primarily suburban, around town, kind of just errand running stuff, a little bit of highway mixed in, but I'm getting 27 mpg. And so I typically do get 1 to 2 mpg less than the city rating in my usual driving. So we're 1 under the city rating, and it's also winter time, which oftentimes does hurt fuel economy even more. So to me, I'm actually fairly happy with only 1 under the city rating. I was expecting a little lower. And so this actually leads me to believe that in ideal circumstances, this could potentially overperform those estimates. And obviously your mileage will vary. It comes down to your driving circumstances, how you drive, where you drive, all that. But having a nice small little engine is certainly nice. Now, if you do care about fuel economy, there's not really any hybrid competitors. The only one that's really out there is the Corolla Cross Hybrid, which will do much better fuel economy at a slight price premium. But again, with how expensive this vehicle is, it's not much of a premium. So if you want good fuel economy, check that one out. Basically, nobody else offers a hybrid as of the time of me filming this. But now, let's talk about pricing and how it compares to the competition. And that is, I think, the biggest sticking point for me for the Taos here. So, starting at $26,420. Now, again, does come with some nice little features, like, again, heated steering wheel is standard. So it's not going to be an apples to apples comparison. It really comes down to what features you care about the most. But basically $26,500 to start. This one, as tested, is $32,025 and still doesn't have all-wheel drive, which would bump it up to, almost $34,000. And a fully loaded SEL, which only comes with all-wheel drive, is going to run you about $36,000. And 36 grand is higher than I think every single one of these competitors will get to, at least as far as comparable powertrains. It's just the most expensive, and it's just too expensive. They messed up the pricing on this. I'm sorry, but that's the bottom line here. So I'll talk about the competition in a second, but the other thing that I don't love is, it's also worth noting, is that you also have a shorter warranty for the powertrain compared to most of the other competitors. So most vehicles, it's 3 years, 36,000 miles for bumper to bumper, and then 5 years, 60,000 miles for powertrain. This, though, just gives you 4 years, 50,000 miles for everything. So gives you a little bit of an improvement as far as, the bumper to bumper, but then downgrades you for your powertrain. And I mean, Volkswagens oftentimes are pretty reliable, but they're not the most reliable brand out there, I'd say. And the fact that, the warranty is shorter than basically everybody else just gives me some pause. I don't love that. I'm not sure why they shortened it. You'd think they'd want to be competitive with everybody, and why they skimped on the powertrain warranty, I don't know, but just be warned, you only have coverage for 50,000 miles or 4 years as far as that goes. But if you are interested in a Taos, or any vehicle for that matter, and you want to have the lowest pricing possible, you're definitely going to head over to maranmotoring.com. There, you're going to go to the new car quotes page, and you can get access to dealer invoice pricing, as well as getting connected to local dealers in your area who can show you one of these. You can take it for a test drive, see what you think about the Taos, and check it out for yourself. But if you were hoping to get the best pricing possible, that's definitely the way to do it. I'll include a link in the description, as well as a pinned comment here with a link that goes straight to that site, and be able to get that pricing. But let's talk about how it compares to the competition. There's a bunch of competitors to talk about, but I'm going to briefly just go over the most competitive ones and what they offer compared to this. So yes, there are a ton of vehicles in this segment. To make it the most helpful, I'm going to break it down into 3 categories. Those that are front-wheel drive only, for shoppers that don't care about all-wheel drive, then talk about the competitors that have an all-wheel drive option like the Taos does, and lastly talk about the all-wheel drive only options. So, in the front-wheel drive category, we have the Chevy Trax, Buick Envista, Kia Soul, and Hyundai Venue. The Trax is honestly the strongest competitor overall if you don't need all-wheel drive, starting $3 grand lower at $23,500 and only going up to $27,000 fully loaded, with features comparable to this $32,000 Taos, and even stuff beyond what the Taos offers, like a much bigger touchscreen. A $5,000 savings is huge, and what's also huge is the backseat and the hatch in the Trax, which might even be bigger than the Taos. It's no mystery why Chevy sold over 200,000 of the Trax in 2024. It's really well done and priced extremely well, and I liked it a lot. The Buick Envista, that's basically the same underneath to the Trax, is a little fancier and does lose some stacking ability in the cargo area with its sloped roof, but even that is only $29,500, still $2,500 less than this Taos. Other good values, but a little less impressive these days, are the aging Kia Soul and Hyundai Venue, which are slightly smaller and slower, but again only go to the mid to high 20s for their price tags. Moving on to the ones with all-wheel drive options, we have another one of the best values and another one of my favorites in this segment, the brand new Nissan Kicks, which also starts at an incredibly low $23,000. Also has a lot more space now, and $30,000 gets you the top SR trim with double 12.3-inch screens, a Bose stereo, and lots of plush materials everywhere. You even have speakers in the headrests, all kinds of stuff, but it does have less power than this. Moving on to the others, does start to get into some similar pricing to the Taos, with the Hyundai Kona also being very nice with double 12.3-inch screens, even more turbo punch than the Taos, and a 10-year 100,000-mile powertrain warranty, double what Volkswagen gives you, and that's only $1,000 more at about $33,000 comparably equipped. The Kia Seltos also gives you those same perks as well, but also adds in cooled seats at that same $33,000 price point. If big screens aren't a top priority, the Honda HR-V is very plush and has a similar amount of space, and that's only $31,000 comparably equipped, and even that gives you full leather seats at that price, something that again Volkswagen requires $36,000 for. The Toyota Corolla is a slightly less competitive option these days, but gives you the famous Toyota reliability and costs basically the same as the Taos, and again that is the only one with a hybrid option, so if you're interested in the top fuel economy in this segment, that's going to be the way to get that. And the last two competitors that only come with all-wheel drive and are a little pricier are the Subaru Crosstrek and the Mazda CX-30. The Crosstrek's most comparable trim is the Limited that comes out to almost $35,000, but does give you leather and a Harman Kardon stereo at that price, so it still undercuts that SE Taos, which is $36,000. I don't think the Crosstrek is a super strong competitor though personally, and I'd rather just have the Taos compared to the Crosstrek, but Subaru sells a ton of Crosstreks, so there must be a good reason why, and so that's why I'm mentioning it here. The Mazda CX-30 is my favorite driver of the bunch, and even with the near luxury car levels of refinement and interior niceties, along with full leather and a Bose stereo, it still only comes out to $34,000, $2,000 less than the Taos. Unfortunately, the big downfall of the CX-30 though is its cramped back seat and smaller cargo area, but if you don't need a lot of space, it would be my pick for sure for those needing all-wheel drive. So as you can see, the Taos is just too expensive, with basically everyone undercutting it on price and on features. And now with newer competitors getting larger, the Volkswagen size just isn't as compelling as it used to be. But yeah, and so overall, the Taos in a vacuum, I think it's improved. Certainly, it's easier to drive. It's less offensive from a powertrain standpoint than I, was really annoyed with the one a few years back and just was so hard to drive smoothly. This is mostly fine now. It's a nice little runabout in a vacuum. Again, especially if you absolutely love your Taos, you just want to, go up to a newer one and the price doesn't bother you, by all means, it's a really nice little improvement. But if, again, you cross shop at all, I mean, it's really tough to justify. And there's, probably, majority of the vehicles in this segment I would rather have over this. Again, it all comes down to how much space you need, how much cargo space you're looking for, how much power you want. But, it's just too expensive. And so, if that doesn't bother you, I like the Taos a lot, but unfortunately I think that most of the competitors offer you more stuff for less money and are just as nice in every other way as well. So anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the Taos. Let me know your thoughts on the 2025 Taos in the comments below. Huge thanks to Volkswagen for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.